So welcome back here to Stream B. And joining me is our gold partner, Ayoko, for a very provocative panel discussion called The Data Scientist is Dead. So I'm very keen to hear everyone's thoughts on this. So we've got Alex Pryor, Richard Vester, Tsepo Magoma, and Varsha Ramesar, who I've actually known now for quite a while, Varsha. So good to meet the rest of the team. Tsepo, you're going to lead the panel discussion. I'm going to hand over to you now. Enjoy it. Just to everybody, please do put questions down in the Q&A box and we'll get to those at the end of the session. Tsepo, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to our panel discussion called The Death of a Data Scientist. The death of a data scientist. I bet some of you are probably thinking, well, that sounds awfully macabre. I mean, what does it even mean? Data scientist has been called the sexiest job of the 21st century. We have seen knowledge-based jobs like lawyers and accountants being automated. But then what does the future hold for data science? Will data science prove to be an exception? Well, let's find out. So Varsha, can you help us unpack what this means?
Cool, thanks, Tsepo. It is quite macabre, and I probably have friends and family who are going to look at me funny at the next braai. But I actually have a lot of sympathy for the plight of the data scientist. If I think about what we call data science, we've taken these brilliant people with PhDs, we've thrown lots of data at them and said, make the magic happen. Wrangle this data, sort out this data, cleanse it, and then apply some sort of intelligence to it and give me some sort of insight. It reminds me a lot of the fable of Rumpelstiltskin. And that was all about, you've got this old wooden spinning machine, you've got hay, and you need to turn it into gold. And that's what we expected from data scientists. But there were two key missing ingredients. One is technology, and the other is context to the data. So if I think about technology, what is changing is the democratization of technology that allows for the science of data. What does this mean? It means access to new technologies that enable you to actually do the really cool things with it without spending all of that time doing the wrangling, the manual cleansing, the manual consolidation before you reach some sort of insight. My colleague Richard can share a bit more around technology and how that's changing this domain. The second component is context. Without business context, there is no meaning to the data. Without meaning, there's no actual insight that can lead to an action or a change in the business. So I would like to say it is the death of data science, but it's the birth of the business scientist going forward. Tsepo?
So Richard, how is cloud impacting on this?
Thanks, Tsepo. So cloud is I think from a data and cloud perspective, it's a marriage that's absolutely perfect. If we go back many years, you would find that the traditional consumer of infrastructure, where organizations, small, medium enterprises, were taking a large amount of investment in building servers and storage, but the exponential growth of data has made it a lot more difficult for organizations to be able to go and really, I suppose, get some logic out of that information that's sitting inside the server rooms and the data centers. So cloud really is allowing now organizations to be able to access their data across the internet, make a little bit more sense out of the data, use the power of compute, and allow organizations to I suppose monetize the amount of data that they have.
Cool. So we got the access and we got the people who can do these incredible things now. But how do you maintain it? I mean, Alex, can you share your views about how this is maintained and managed?
Hey there, Tsepo. So yes, I'm sure most of us on this conference, on this call, have heard of DevOps. And DevOps was for software development, really being able to move from only delivering piece of functionality a few times per year to be able to delivering piece of functionality multiple times per day for some organizations. And within this data space, you really need to start thinking about what they're calling data ops. Obviously, it takes its cues from DevOps in that it's trying to improve both the quality of your data, but also the time to be able to get to meaningful data. So it's ultimately looking at time to value. And just like in DevOps, Data ops is really taking its cue from agile methodology. It's about cross-functional teams working together in order to get value out of the data that's in the organization, to manage it, to monitor it, to maintain it, to be able to deal with issues as they come up. Because in order for the democratization of data to be successful, you've got to have data at a point where it is as clean as possible. We all know, all of us in all our different organizations know that there's no such thing as clean data. But data ops really looks at how we move from a state of having data that is unusable to being able to have a consistent state of usable data to add value to the organization.
Thank you, Alex. So what about the barriers to entry? Richard, what's your views on that?
So I think the barrier to entry is definitely lowered. I think in the past, the skill that was required in order to run different services in, let's talk about the hyperscale. So we talk around AWS, we talk around Google, Azure. These platforms, again, because they are hyperscale and because it's exponential ability to be able to take data and make logical sense out of it, the barrier has definitely been lowered. So the amount of training that is available and information for engineers to skill themselves up and to use all of the different tooling that is available now through the hyperscale providers is absolutely amazing. If you just see on the internet today, the amount of people that are posting their certifications and their ability to be able to go and use these services, it really is exponential. So I think by lowering the barrier, by making different applications available in the hyperscale, it's definitely making, I suppose, the ability for smaller organizations that typically wouldn't be able to, like I said before, monetize the data and information, it's really becoming a reality for them now.
Okay, this sounds cool, but now I got a whole bunch of data scientists. So what do I do with them? Does it mean, do I now need to get rid of them? And Richard's point around skills, how are we addressing this? Can you take this, Varsha?
Sure, thanks for that question, Seppo. We definitely don't want to be getting rid of people. It's all about upskilling, reskilling, or enhancing the different types of skills. And I think one of the first things to look at is when we call someone a data scientist, what is the role that they're actually fulfilling? And we think of a bit of a Venn diagram around there's the technology component. We spoke about context and business understanding, and there's the maths and sciences of it. So a lot of the times, though, we're taking data scientists and getting them to do BI reporting, dashboarding, or the consolidation of data. So it's a question around the people we have. Are they actually doing the things needed in that data value chain? And what are those right things to enable the monetization of data or the realization of value? So that's the one component, that what is my current landscape? The second bit is, with all of the different types of technologies out there, it's no longer about getting a degree in something. It's about certifications and about understanding how does the tech work, quickly spinning up something, working on POCs to actually get the feel of this new technology. So especially with the cloud type of environments, there's lots of access to training. You get it on things like Udemy. You've got Khan's Academy. You've got so much of collateral out there these days. And that's actually what's wonderful. It's a great opportunity for people to still build careers. But again, it could be as a full stack developer, it's a data engineer, it's a business engineer, it's a decision engineer. All of these new options now exist.
I think that's a good point, Varsha, and we were chatting about this before the session. Unfortunately, when you ask 10 people what a data scientist is, you're going to get 10 different answers. And as Chip, as you said, data science is the sexiest job of the 21st century. But people don't really know what it is. They think that they can do one course and they can go and get these amazing salaries and amazing consulting rates. But what you really need going forward is specialists. As Varsha says, whether that is a specialist data engineer or a specialist in financial services data modeling. And the democratization of data lets us start that journey internally without those specialists. But where the data scientist, as we think of it, as that great sexy job is really going to be the data specialist of tomorrow. I mean, I don't know, Varsha, if you want to add anything there, but I know we sort of upset Shep a little bit because he's like, cool, I'm going to be a data scientist. I'm like, well.
And I mean, we have a lot of people with those ambitions, but again, it's around that specialization, whether it's on tech or business component. Do they understand harmonics and frequencies in the engineering space to be a data scientist around that? Is it around financial engineering? What is that specific thing around a data scientist?
Absolutely, and different industries are going to have different requirements and different needs. Unfortunately, they don't always know this. So they're going to go, we were saying, we're going to go out and have an executive that says, I need a data scientist. But what he actually needs is a report writer, or what he actually needs is a release train engineer. And I think part of the education is not just for individuals to figure out what they need to do to skill up, but it's also us in the business to realize what we need in order to get the best value out of our data.
Yes, yes. No, thank you for those wonderful insights. And I'm sure, as you can see in my background, I have millennials, so I have to ask one question for the millennials so that they can feel represented as well. So it was confirmed through a series of internal surveys that 50% of the workforce in some companies are millennials. So what careers advice can you share for young people in this field and those who had a career interest in data science? Varsha, can you share your views, and perhaps with Alex and Richard as well?
Okay, so yeah, I'll kick it off with probably linking into what I shared, that if you look at people right now and the changing landscape of data jobs, the jobs that exist today didn't exist 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And that's a lifetime in millennials, right? So it's all about this continuous learning, and it's about the ability to learn. So problem solving, curiosity, those are raw competencies that you look for in an individual. And it's about nurturing those competencies. If you are naturally curious, you're always checking what is the latest and what more can I learn? What different perspective can I add on to something like data? And data skills are scarce. So there's always going to be careers in data, but it's just about accepting that it is continuous learning, accepting that it's not just a degree and the story ends there. You know, previously, if you got a computer science degree or a applied maths, physics degree, you thought, okay, cool, I'm set, I'm sorted. It's not necessarily the case anymore. So there's always this continuous upskilling that's very, very important. So my advice would be, make sure it's something you're passionate about. I think most of the people at DataCon are passionate about data. That's why everybody's here. But you have to have that internal fire. It's got to be that internal drive to always be searching for what's next with data. Alex, I don't know if you'd like to add.
Yes, absolutely. So I love that, and I love working with people who are passionate. But I'd also like to just remind people not to discount, invert commas, the boring stuff. If millennials, if you're interested in data, but you're interested in making things work better, and you're interested in always having a job available to you, think about the as I say, boring streams like data governance. Think about data cleaning. It's not the sexy stuff, but honestly, there's always going to be a need for it. So trying to find this, as Varsha said earlier, draw a little Venn diagram for yourself. Where does your interest lie and you're willing to keep learning? Where is there always going to be work? And what industries are you interested in that you can start specializing your skills in? So I think it's really about meeting those three different areas. As Varsha says, like, keep learning, and it doesn't have to be formal. You have to be able to be willing to try new courses. You have to be willing to try out new things and take those skills and put them into practice. What we know full well is that when you do a course, it's great, it's fantastic, and you've forgotten most of it within a week. You've got to take your ideas, you've got to put them into practice. You have to work with your companies and your organizations to really start moving the data landscape forward. And it doesn't have to be a big change today. It can be little incremental changes over time. And as Varsha says, jobs today weren't there 5 years ago. In 5 years' time, they're going to be jobs we haven't even imagined today with the way the tech is changing. But I'd love Rich to just hop in on that from a cloud side. But it's one of those ones that the opportunities, even if the data scientist as the internet term is dead, there's still lots and lots and lots of potential for data, because data is being seen as the biggest asset of the 21st century.
I think to add on to that, Alex, if you look at digital transformation as a topic, and as a topic that's being bandied around by many organizations today, it is really made up of three things that organizations are looking at. Firstly is you need to have processes. The second is you need to have the right architecture. And third, you need to have the data. So data is flowing through absolutely everything. And organizations that are going on this journey of digital transformation data is one of those key parts of their transformation. So looking at millennials in terms of coming up and what should they be studying, how they should do that. And I'm just going to use as an example AWS or Google or Azure from Microsoft in terms of the roadmap that they take individuals through, starting at a base level, allowing them to skill themselves up. Like Varsha said, there's so much content available for them to be able to learn, and it's available on the internet. From there, once you've got the base understanding of how these platforms work, you then can start scaling up and enhance your skill in those different platforms. So it's a bit of a journey for individuals as well. But the nice thing is you don't have to be that AAA student that has an ability to be able to go and become a data scientist, or have all these things behind you when you actually leave school. Ultimately, you can learn and develop your ability through the hyperscale capability using a lot of what's available on the internet. And with the changes that are happening in terms of these platforms, new introduction of enhancements and different services, you need to be continuously studying and learning and staying abreast of the tech change.
Thank you, guys. That was quite insightful. For the millennials, I hope all your questions regarding the career path within data science is answered. So moving on, I just wanted to know in terms of what are your top predictions for the next few years, and what should companies be focusing on? Alex?
So when we're thinking about data trends or about general trends, and I could talk about this for half an hour all by myself, but I'm going to try and keep it down because of time. One of the things that's really exciting me is the potential for what they're calling edge computing. And that's where you take the data processing actually out of the cloud, sorry, Rich, and you put it back in the device. So this is really where IoT, Internet of Things, comes in, where you actually do some of the data processing at the edge, at the device itself, so you don't have to push too much data up in the cloud, process it, take it back down again. You actually get your insights immediately. I think that's incredibly exciting, and the potential for that, especially if you think things like autonomous cars, where you can't afford for when you're driving down the road to send a signal back up to the mothership. See, should I stop here? Shouldn't I stop it? You've got to have the processing down on the ground. It's amazing. But unfortunately, I think from not unfortunately, but from a South African perspective, I think we probably still got a bit of a way to go before we get there, or rather before we get there as a widely spread phenomenon. But what's really exciting for me with organizations, and what we're really seeing the potential now, is how businesses have access to data and to information, being able to have analytics on information that they've always had, but they've never been able to use. Jeba, you may have heard of something called a data lake. What that really means is it's all this data that's not structured. It's not sitting in a typical old-fashioned SQL table. It's unstructured data. It gets put in the cloud, and for the first time, we can actually take that data and we can analyze it, and we get insights that we've never actually seen before. I'd like Varsha actually just to expand a little bit on this, because this is some of her core capabilities that she does, is really being able to drive value from something that doesn't sit in a typical SQL table. Varsha.
Thanks, Alex. So yeah, I mean, we keep talking about lakes, and again, I guess similar with data science, it was let's put all the data together and suddenly we have value. So I think if we look at the trends going forward, it's about moving away from what's become a swamp into something that's a little bit more structured. And I'm going to use the swear word that some people hate, governed. And especially with things like POPIA and GDPR, and making sure that the insights we get is actually usable and can be trusted, you still need data governance. And I think, to what Alex shared earlier, it's the non-sexy piece of work. It's still foundational. So what I see going forward is that there's going to be almost a swing back of the pendulum to give you more structure around your unstructured data, more governance around it, more of the data about the data. So your metadata, your lineage, understanding where it came from, all the back to basics, that becomes more prominent as we move forward. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from my side, there's both. As you said, the data governance is absolutely going to come into play. And I suppose also back to our topic means that the old-fashioned data scientists can't just go out and get any insight they want out of things. But they're also very cool generalist insights that we can get out. I remember one you were telling me about where we found out that people, I think, bought, was it more petrol when it was going to, when it was raining? It was these insights we've never been able to see before just because we haven't had the computing power to be able to deal with them. So that's really, for me, is something that's really quite exciting. The other trend, again, is a little bit more on the boring side, but it's really that data ops I was talking about previously. It feeds into that governance of data, but it talks about time to value. So I think there's going to be a big focus in South Africa about, okay, we've got DevOps, hopefully. Now we need data ops and how that fits into our traditional way of working.
Oh, thank you, guys. I'm really learning a lot. That was quite insightful so far. But before I let you guys off the hook, I would just like to pose this final question, is that what should businesses be focusing on, and what is the next crucial step to start them on this journey? Varsha?
Thanks, Seppo. And this is something I think Alex and Richard have heard me say 1,000,001 times. It's always start with some sort of use case or something that you're trying to achieve, not just doing something for the sake of doing it or because it's trending and it's cool. And it's also having a very clear outcome, something measurable about how do we know that whatever we're trying to do right now is actually going to be successful. So there's playpens, and I think we've all gone down the lab route to experiment and see what value can be found. I think, again, that pendulum is swinging back. We need very clear use cases defined, and we need very clear outcomes defined. So to all businesses, I would advise start there. It's not about big bang. It's starting with small things that you can actually measure. Cool. Thanks, Seppo.
I'd add there that it's not a case of worrying about being left behind. It's really about taking what you've got and leveraging it in a way you haven't done so before. The tools are there to enable businesses to do that. The people and the skills are available. The tools are available that you no longer need a classically trained data scientist to be able to get that insight out. But as Varsha says, you do need to know what you're trying to get out of it. Otherwise, your value is going to be meaningless. So stop worrying about what the company next to you is doing and start looking at what you yourself have. And I suppose that would really be my advice. And then, of course, I come from the innovation side. So I know Varsha is saying swinging more to data governance. I do agree with that, but I'm also really big on experimentation. So figure out your use cases and figure out 3 or 4 different iterations of those use cases and say, what if I did this? What if I did that? If it works, keep it and keep doing it. If it doesn't work, try something new, because that's really how we move the conversation forward. That's really how we get the value out of our data, out of our applications, out of our cloud platforms. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, but if we are going to be innovating in our organizations, we need to take what we've got and we need to use it in a way that we haven't been able to previously. And that just means using the tools that are already available to us.
And probably just to add, I know we're nearly out of time there, but don't let FOMO and don't let labels stand in the way of progress. So just because the person's not labeled data scientist or you don't have something called a data lake does not mean you can't innovate as a company. So work with what you have. I just want to reiterate that part of Alex. Don't let FOMO be in the way of progress.
Absolutely. Chip, I see there's a question that's come through on the Q&A. Do you want to read that to us?
Yes, most profoundly. So we have a question from Tam, Tam from Zindi here. She says, our platform has 26,000 data scientists with different levels of experience. Would you advise to focus at a certain vertical where you want to work in? Or would you advise more of a generalist approach where you understand IT systems and business outcomes with one specialist skill?
Okay, who wants to go first for that? We might have differing views as a panel, but that's why it is a panel.
Yes.
So for me, my first question would be, when we say 26,000 data scientists with different levels, it goes back to, are they truly data scientists, or there's some data engineers in there, data analysts, some BI intelligence people, etc. And then based on that, especially with the question around, is it IT systems and business outcomes? The IT system piece already talks to me that there's data engineers sitting in that bucket of 26,000 specialists. So it might be a discussion about what's fit for purpose. There's some people who would lean towards, yes, understand the IT systems, but those become the data engineers. And then there'll be the vertical specialization, which become those business scientists. That makes sense. So I would see it that way. That was just my own personal perspective.
Yes, from my side, I see that you need both. And it doesn't have to be both within the same individual, but as an organization, and wow, 26,000 data scientists is an amazing number of data scientists. But as Varsha says, what are they all doing? They can't all be doing the same job. So it's figuring out what each cluster of them is actually doing, and seeing whether it would make more sense for them to go a more technical route in the IT systems, whether to be a more business process and business outcome focused individuals, or whether they become industry specialists. And you're going to have different people who are going to be differently equipped to deal with each of these spaces. So it's not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It's about saying, we've got 26,000 people working for us. What is the right fit for each of those people, and how can we enable them to help enable us?
Thank you, guys. Thank you. That was quite insightful. And I think for myself, I would just like to take this moment and to thank our panel speakers who have deliberated more on the information and gave us an insightful knowledge. I've learned quite extensively. But just one final thought that I would like to leave you with is that in our world of data, businesses are relying on data scientists to glean insight from their large, ever-expanding, diverse set of data. While many people may think of data science as a profession, I personally think that, and from this discussion, that it's better to think of data science as a way of thinking, a way to extract insight using the scientific method. I mean, above all else, at some point, we all need to show the data. And what matters at the end of the day is that, will that data give you the rightful insight that can enable you to make the right business decisions?